Ask Mapped, episode 109, with the marvelous Mapped team, including our newest advisor, Courtney Lewis, former director of admissions at Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine. Courtney, welcome to the Mapped team.
Hi, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to have you here and have your knowledge and hopefully answer some amazing questions about osteopathic medicine and applying and just sharing your wisdom about the application process in general. So excited. If you have DO specific questions, today is the day, and going forward is the day to ask them. Verinia Granum, former assistant dean in the Prehealth and STEM advising at Hofstra University. How are you doing, Verinia?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
Yes, we got to get Courtney one of those fancy headsets so we can make it happen. Although, Courtney, you do have a fancy mic. We just got to get it set up and working. We'll get there. We'll get there. And, of course, Mapped co-founder Rachel Grubbs. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm excellent. I'm so happy to be here. And although Dr. Wright has today off, so we miss him, I am super thrilled that our Premed and Prehealth friends who are joining us today get to meet Courtney and pick her expert brain in addition to all of our brains.
Yeah, and as we roll here, as Courtney disappears, as we roll here, we'll figure it out, right? We have a new advisor. Maybe we just rotate through some advisors as we go forward, so we not have 5 people on a call, or maybe you want all 5 of us. So you'll have to let us know. Yep. But as Courtney is figuring out her stuff, we'll rock and roll and we'll get going here. Carrie asks, can a Texas school see which other Texas school offered you an interview? Now, if only Dr. Scott Wright were here, he would be able to let us know. As far as I know, they cannot. They cannot see that kind of stuff. But that is a good question. I don't know. Let me send a text and oh man, hold on. I'm gonna send a text to our TMDSAS people. And we'll look at this next question while I do that. So Ray asks, I am a foreign med grad, so an IMG. We call them IMGs now. So that tells me age, right? And they say 2011. So FMG used to be the terminology that we use, and now it's IMG. I don't know why they changed it, but they did. So step 1 score, 84% for an IMG is probably pretty low. Never attempted steps 2 and 3 due to immigration and family. Now have 155 hours, GPA 3.5 US college, Mcat underway. What are my chances? Good. Keep rocking and rolling. So this happens a lot, unfortunately, where international medical grads come to this country or try to match in this country. So they take step 1, step 2. I don't know how far along they have to go to go into residency. But you need really high step scores as an international medical graduate to come. So a lot of them, as Ray has done, just go, you know what? I'm gonna move to the US and go take classes and get into the educational debt that America seems to love. Unfortunately. So, Ray, keep pushing. Obviously, the higher the GPA, the better.
Yeah. I think foreign carried negative connotations. That's why it's now international medical graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amy asks, what should I answer for schools that are asking for anything else regarding academics, GPA or MCAT? I feel like saying I've taken the MCAT 3 times brings attention to that part of my app. Surprise, Amy, they already see that you've taken it 3 times. So you're not bringing attention to it. They see it. Courtney, in these situations, right, a student's taking the MCAT 3 times. And she lost. All right, we got to get Courtney's internet a little bit stronger for her to come play with us. Verinia, for a student who takes the MCAT 3 times, a medical school's gonna see this. Is this a good opportunity to explain potentially what happened the first 2 times?
Not at all. I mean, it's not something that really needs to be highlighted, unless.
Well, no. So let me make sure you understand here.
Okay.
The student is saying in the secondary, the school is asking for this information.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
Then yes. Yes.
Tell
sorry.
us about anything academic GPA wise.
Yes. Then in that case, sure, you can definitely bring it up. At the end of the day, though, I feel like if you've improved in your score, it's not something to kind of be afraid to talk about or to hide. Just explain what happened, explain what led to it, and that's it. No reason to try to shy away from it.
Yes. Yep, just good opportunity there. Giorgio, should I be providing an anecdote for all of my AMCAS activity descriptions? Would that get repetitive? So this is a big point of contention. A lot of advisors are like, you don't need stories for everything. Stop listening to Dr. Gray. And I'm like, I'm not telling them to put stories for everything. Rachel, what are your thoughts here for this one?
We talk about the value of storytelling as a way of showing impact, right? So if one of your AMCAS activities is, I was lucky enough to shadow 8 different doctors, or heck, even 3 different doctors, then you're probably just going to list like physician, specialty. That's going to be the whole activity, that essay. That's going to be the whole description. But where we talk about an anecdote, or maybe not even an anecdote, as an example, is when you are trying to convey meaning. So if you just think about how long have humans been around, and it's hundreds of thousands or millions of years, depending on your particular interpretation of how long we've been human, we mostly communicate through story, right? That's the way humans relate to each other. So if you had something that was meaningful to you, and I'm not talking about most meaningful, I'm saying anything meaningful enough that it's showing up in your AMCAS activity, then you could either try to tell us, I met a wide range of people from many diverse backgrounds, and I grew a lot. And the admissions reader is going to go, yawn, I've read about these plural, anonymous, many people from many different backgrounds 20 times today, and I still have 20 more apps to go. Or you could pick one example of one family or patient that had a different background from you that opened your eyes, and convey the same information in a way that is memorable, that anchors that patient in the reader's brain, right? So do you have to provide an anecdote for every activity? No, you don't. What you want to think about is, are you just describing it, or are you taking advantage of the essay to let the reader get to know you and understand either how that activity impacted you or how you impacted your activity?
Absolutely.
All right. Rowan asks, how would an admissions committee view getting a master's? The master's would be in a field of interest unrelated to medicine, similar to my undergrad degree. So this comes up all the time with students who need potentially to improve grades, right? And Rowan here isn't necessarily saying, hey, I'm doing a master's to improve my grades. So that would be the first question. Are you doing the master's for grade improvement? If you're doing a master's for grade improvement, the master's should be in some sort of hard sciences or an SMP, a special master's program. That's first and foremost. If you're doing a master's just because you're interested in it, you want a MPH because you're interested in public health, you want to get a master's in bioinformatics because you're interested in that, have at it, right? Go have fun if you're not using it for grade replacement, and don't worry about what medical schools are going to think about it, because they really don't care what kind of other things you're doing. They don't have time to go, oh, look at this other person out here doing this major or getting this master's in this thing that's really interesting. Let's invite this person for an interview. So if you're doing it for fun, go have fun. If you're doing it for grade replacement, it should be hard sciences. Or not grade replacement, but grade enhancement. Old school language, grade replacement from the old DO days. Megan asks, how do I prepare for interviews? Well, it just so happens. I mean, I wrote a book about it. Verinia, now is it's interview season. How should students prepare for interviews?
Practice. Definitely pick up a copy of Dr. Gray's book. Get a sense of how to approach the interview. We talk about this all the time. It's not a job interview where you have to go in and answer, show your results and show what you've done in your job. You're there to hopefully get to know them. They're there to hopefully get to know you as a person. So practice just having conversations around certain topics that are bound to come up. Like, why do you want to be a doctor? Why our school? Why should we select you? Get comfortable with those types of questions. You'll find tons and tons of those in the book. And then get rid of all the preconceived ideas that you may have about what an interview should look like, and approach this just as though you were having a conversation with someone that you met who really just wants to get to know who you are.
Love it. So let's go back to Carrie's question, if we can find it. Carrie's question was about, can Texas schools see which other Texas schools offered you an interview? And my amazing rep that I have at TMDSAS has confirmed that, yes, they can. So they can see what schools you applied to. They can see what schools are offering you interviews. So it's interesting, which is very different, I think, than other institution or the other application services. I know AMCAS had big changes with their process, with what schools could see or couldn't see, that schools didn't like. So previously, schools were able to see where you were getting acceptances, and if they wanted to offer you an acceptance, they would go, well, Sally has an acceptance at Harvard. They're not going to want to come to Podunk State University Medical School, and so that state school wouldn't offer an acceptance at that point. And I think the legal minds got together and said, that's some legal issues surrounding this process. So I just texted my contact back, and I was like, any thoughts about changing that, since the AAMC and AMCAS obviously gave into some legal pressures of changing that. So we shall see.
Interesting.
Yeah. Flo asks, should we still apply the cycle if we have an MCAT date of August? I already submitted my application, but Reddit said it was too late. Rachel, they already applied, so I don't know why they're asking if they should still apply. Maybe still submit secondaries.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts here?
So, Flo, sometimes Dr. Wright talks about optimal, acceptable, not acceptable. And optimally, you would be taking the MCAT a lot earlier. And here's why. You said you've already submitted your application. So it sounds like at least one primary app for at least one school has been sent, right? Maybe additional primaries. So you've already spent that money. And that probably means you're also automatically getting some secondaries now, which you can choose to spend money on or not, depending on whether or not you're going to proceed with this cycle. Let's say you said you have an MCAT date in August. I don't know if that's early in August or late, but so let's say it's mid-August. That means your MCAT score is not coming until mid-September. So there's two things going on here. One is you're going to have to do your secondaries at the same time you do your MCAT, because, well, you don't have to, but if you're going to proceed with this plan, that's what I would strongly recommend, is finding a way to balance both. And then just keep in mind, med schools, almost all of them in the US do rolling admissions, which means that they look at applications as they come in and get complete and start offering interviews. And most schools start offering interviews. The first round will happen in July for August. But you won't be in that round because you're not going to have a complete application until your MCAT comes in and your secondaries come in. So is it optimal? No. Is it still acceptable? It's kind of on the line. Typically, I say if you're applying in on August, or in this case, kind of wrapping up your application in August or September, that I hope you have really good stats. And the reason is that a lot of interview seats will already have been given away. And interviews are where the big weeding happens, right? Thousands and thousands of people apply, and a small fraction of them get interviews. So what you're doing is limiting the chances of getting interviews. That said, I know someone who took the Mcat in September last year who is having her first week of med school right now. So it is still possible. And what you just have to decide is, what does my summer look like? What do I have on my plate besides Mcat and secondaries? Am I going to be able to get everything in? Am I confident I'm going to kill the Mcat and confident enough that I want to pay the money for secondaries? Or do I want to cut my losses, just focus on Mcat and reapply next year? It's not a right or wrong. It's your decision. Good luck.
Yeah. And one other thing I'll add to that is that schools have the ability to save interview spots for perfect applicants. And perfect doesn't mean best stats, but perfect applicants for them. So I know I've had this conversation with someone who's part of the admissions at UC Riverside, where they have a very specific mission to serve the Inland Empire. And they will, if someone applies at the deadline and they're from the Inland Empire, they will offer that person an interview, assuming everything else works out stat-wise, because that's the mission that they serve. And so they'll save. So if it's a very mission specific, if it's a DE&I specific, there are lots of reasons why students get interviews later in the cycle, because it fits that school specifically. Yeah. Big picture, broad generalizations, the later that you apply, the worse you are.
Right. And I guess what I'll also mention here, Flo, because this has come up several times this summer, is this is one of those things about the med school application process that is not clear. Part of what Mappd and med school headquarters are trying to do is make it much more clear, but a lot of people bring what they know about other school admissions processes to the med school and assume, well, the deadline's in the fall, I can apply anytime I want in the summer and fall, and I'm in good shape. But this rolling admissions makes it really tricky. So you're not alone in having this confusion, and you just, now that you know what you know, you need to make a decision. But it's one of the really tough parts about the med admissions process, that it's not well advertised that earlier applicants have better chances.
Mm-hmm.
Mac, do you think that schools who are recommending or requiring the AAMC preview exam will be using it similar to those who use Casper? Using it similar. So in terms of like schools potentially filtering based on Casper or screening based on Casper, I'm assuming that's the question. And the answer is yeah. So the AAMC, let me see if I can pull it up actually, because I'm pretty sure this is public information. The AAMC gave a talk at the National Advisor Association conference recently and talked about the schools, each of the schools that are using Preview and how they are using Preview. So if I pull that up here, Donde? Maybe I don't have it. Let's see. School. Yeah. So, yeah, they don't have the only information they gave, schools that are using it for research only at this point, are Carle, Illinois College of Medicine, Chicago Medical School, Oklahoma College of Medicine, and Virginia School of Medicine. Those are the research only. And then there's the required recommended, but they didn't break it down specifically how they're using it. And so the question always comes down to, are you using it to screen for interviews? Are you using it to screen for acceptances post-interview? Are you using it just for data gathering? And the answer is yes. The schools use it for all of those things. How they specifically are using it, nobody knows. Eshoy98. Hello, does the school where you do your formal post-bac program play a significant role in admissions? So, Rachel, you and I were talking a little bit about this yesterday because there's a somewhat prestigious institution in the Midwest, Chicago Midwest. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That basically comes out and says, hey, the rigor of your coursework and where you did it plays a role. And so that I asked very specifically, or a student asked very specifically, and sent me this information that community college, they're like, we accept it. And the rigor of the school is considered in admissions process. So that's one school. There are lots of schools where where you do your formal post-bac isn't going to matter. So big picture, you'll be fine wherever you go. Do what works for you, financial wise, time wise. Veronica's got that trigger finger ready to go with next question. Slow down there, Sally. Slow down. Do what works financial wise, time wise, etc. So if you're working full time, you need to take night classes at community college. Like if that's the only option that's not going to bankrupt you, then do what you got to do.
Yeah. I find that so off-putting. Like, how do they know the rigor of the school?
Exactly.
Like, I'm not aware of that kind of data being public. I mean, it's why we have things like the Mcat, because we know that undergraduate curriculum should be roughly similar, but they might not be. So although we have found one school that admitted that they may have a bias against community college or DIY post-bac, I find that really icky. Yeah. I wouldn't want to go to that school.
Yep. A school that claims to have a bias-free curriculum.
Right.
Like, your admissions sure is biased.
Their website says they have a bias-free curriculum, but their admissions, no, you have to be rich enough to be able to afford a formal post-bac. Ick. Do not like.
Nope.
Yeah. Tatiana, would it be wrong to center a personal statement around the lack of Hispanics in the medical field if my EC aligns, such as being a mentor in the Hispanics Scholars Society? So I'm going to give you the advice that I give everyone. And then there are plenty of advisors out there that will say Dr. Gray is wrong and what he's saying is dumb and whatever. Our philosophy is that the personal statement is, why do you want to be a doctor? A lack of Hispanics in the medical field, I guess, is a reason why you want to be a doctor, but that's not why. You didn't just go, let me open a book, my Encyclopedia Britannica that's sitting on the shelf, and let me go look at the careers with the least amount of Hispanic or Latin X people, and I'm gonna, whichever one has the least, I'm gonna go pick. Right? That's probably not how you got to this point. You had other reasons why you are choosing the medical field, and being Hispanic is a big part of obviously who you are and a piece that you want to bring to this field. So use that info as you will. Verinia, what do you think about this?
I agree with what you're saying. I mean, the personal statement should only center around why medicine and why you're doing this. And if you can weave in the fact that you have had experiences where you've recognized that there's just not that many doctors that look like you, sure, if it's a part of your story. But really the center or the central theme of your personal statement should be, why do you want to be a doctor?
The only other thing I'll add to that, is often secondaries have a question that is, what do you think you're bringing to this med school that is unique, or how are you adding to the diversity of the med school? And that could be about ethnicity, but it doesn't have to be. Diversity can mean a lot of things. So I also agree. We're all here at Mappd in the School of Thought that your personal statement should be why medicine. So you're not telling your life story. You're only telling those highlight moments that relate to why medicine. But you're probably going to have a chance to talk specifically about here's how my self-identification and my dream of being a doctor intersect. It's going to come up again later, most likely.
Absolutely.
Yes. BK asks, do committee letters hold any real weight when evaluating applicants? I go to a notoriously difficult undergrad public school that require a lot of a lot for the committee letter. Thank you, Hunter College. I'll call them out every time I have the chance. Unfortunately, some schools like their committee letters. So any real weight, who's to determine what real weight means? I am of the opinion that every student at Hunter should just completely ignore their committee and go get individual letters and do what you want. And yeah, I still have yet to send them a nice email. Yeah, so Hunter is one that their committee has their standards, and they say if you want a committee letter to apply to medical school, if you're applying only MD, you need to have your Mcat score in by October of the year prior to your application, which automatically delays a lot of people. If you want a committee letter, MD only, you need a 514. That's what they consider a competitive MCAT score. If you're applying DO, then you need a 507. You need to jump through a lot of hoops in terms of classes and workshops and other things potentially that they want you to go to. And those seem more reasonable because you want your students ready to apply. But those other hoops are just ridiculous. And then I've talked to a lot of students at that school, and they all feel like they're held hostage by this committee, and it's sad.
Yeah.
Precision. I have a 305 science GPA over 6 years in college due to a rough start. Changed my habits, and my last 66 credit hours, thank you for the trend, is a 3.93. Amazing. MCAT was a 517. Do I need a do-it-yourself post-bac, or are my stats good enough? Verinia. Nice upward trend. 66 credits, 393. I mean, to me, they basically did their post-bac while they were still in school. What are your thoughts? Do they need more proof?
No, I don't think so. 66 credits on a steady upward trend. It's enough, I think, to establish that, yeah, you grew, you recovered, you came back from whatever happened those first couple of semesters, and you've proven that you can handle the work. You did very well on your MCAT. No, I think your stats are good enough. Yeah.
Big nods.
Big nods. Orlando. I am an RN working in the ED of a teaching hospital. It would have been cooler if it was like, I'm an RN working in the ED of a TH, where I work with MDs constantly and DOs. Would you consider that as shadowing, or would you still consider shadowing as required? Rachel Grubbs, this one comes up a bunch, specifically from our nurse friends wanting to go to med school.
Yeah. So there are different advisors will give you different answers, but my opinion is no, that is not shadowing. You're working with physicians constantly. That's great. I love to see RNs apply to med school. You're coming with amazing clinical experience and insights. But, I don't know the specifics of your position, but in many cases, when RNs and physicians are working together, they're working together primarily at the bedside or just specific to the patient interactions. And I think the value of physician shadowing is seen the whole day. So what I would probably do if I were you, and I wouldn't worry about getting a ton of shadowing because you do have all this amazing clinical, but talk to some of those physicians you work with and say, hey, sometime when you're on shift but I'm not, can I come shadow you through the rest of your day so that you're seeing their time charting, their time on the phone with insurance. You're just seeing the parts of the job that aren't the part where you already directly interact with them, just to get a bigger lens on what the day in the life of a physician looks like.
Yeah. That is the goal. The goal is to look at the whole picture of what that physician life is like, and not just at the bedside with them. Henry, in terms of institutional actions, if no charges were filed through my Dean of Students office, do we need to include this in the disciplinary actions section of the application? That is a very specific, nuanced question that you may want to speak with a lawyer. But I think you need to go to your undergrad and say, hey, do I have any institutional actions on my record? So I think ultimately that's where you go. Just if they say no, then the answer is no. If they say yes, then the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, can I do clinical experiences in a private doctor's office? Yes. I mean, public doctor's offices would be a little bit weird. Like show up to the park. Hey, I'm here for my appointment. Yeah.
I mean, there are outdoor mobile clinics.
That's true.
There are. Street medicine is a thing. So yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really understanding the question. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
exactly. Maybe that's
Yeah.
why.
I just put up the clinical does not have to
Mhm.
be in a clinic banner because I assume that's where Miss Jennifer's getting caught. Jennifer, if you've watched some Ask the Deans now, Ask Mapped, you know that we don't think clinical can be told by where you are or your title. It can only be determined by what you do and how you interact with the patients. So if you're in a doctor's office, is it automatically clinical? No. Could it be clinical? Sure.
Could be. Yeah. So doctor's office maybe versus hospital. Maybe that was the big
Mhm.
differentiation. Yeah. Be around patients. Kyle asks, beyond being more friendly to non-trads, is there something different that osteopathic medical schools look for in an applicant compared to allopathic schools? If only our new advisor, Courtney, was here. Courtney's having internet issues or StreamYard issues or something. So I'll try to weigh in on this. So being more friendly to non-trads, definitely historically that has been the case for osteopathic medical schools. Is there something different that osteopathic medical schools look for in an applicant? I'm not sure anything different. Obviously, they're looking for your understanding of osteopathic medicine and potentially what your thoughts are there and why you're interested in osteopathic medicine. And you don't need to shadow. This is a big myth in the world. You don't need to shadow an osteopathic physician to apply to osteopathic medical schools. You don't need an osteopathic letter of recommendation to apply to osteopathic medical schools. But ideally you do, but you don't need them because you can still go research stuff on your own. You can go ask questions. You can go watch YouTube videos. You can do a lot of things that will help you understand. So I think that's the biggest thing is just big understanding. Now, a lot of osteopathic medical schools will say they focus on primary care. A lot of allopathic schools say they focus on primary care. So I don't think that's a huge differentiator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Maybe next time, Kyle, come back and ask again when Courtney is back with us.
There we go.
AJ, hi, Dr. Gray and Verinia and Rachel. I'm writing secondaries right now, and I was wondering if submitting a few days after 2 weeks will be okay. Thank you. 2 weeks is not a formal rule unless it is by the school, so sure.
Yeah.
Yashin, is it necessary to address being a re-applicant in secondaries? And if so, do you have any tips for how to best do this? Thanks. Vernia, there are specific secondary questions that say, if you're a re-applicant, what have you done to improve?
Yep, absolutely. And that's exactly how you answer it. You tell them that you are a reapplicant and let them know what you've been up to ever since.
Yeah.
That's it.
So one of my biggest kind of ways of addressing this is typically around calling yourself out is language that I usually use. Like, tell me why you think you didn't get into school last year. I don't like when students are just like, well, I improved my MCAT score. I got more clinical experience, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, that doesn't necessarily tell me why you don't think or why you think you didn't get in. So call yourself out and say, hey, I applied last year and I didn't understand how to reflect about my journey and write a good personal statement. I had a bad MCAT score. I had no clinical experience. Whatever that answer is for you, and then address how you address those shortcomings.
Yeah.
So I think you only need to address it if the school asks for it. If there's a question about anything else you want to tell us, I don't think you need to go, hey, I'm a reapplicant. They obviously, if they're not asking specifically for it, then move on.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Because a lot of students reapply to medical school. It's not that big of a deal.
And that's a general good rule for secondaries, right? Is don't insert an agenda, don't answer a question they didn't ask. So
Yep.
If you're lucky enough to have some secondaries that don't say, tell me about what you're doing as a reapplicant, move on.
Jessica got prereqs in 2013, master's in biomedical sciences in 2020. Purpose for the master's was to help my GPA 3.01 in undergrad, 3.6 masters are prereqs to old. Will masters make up for old prereqs? Masters will not make up for old prereqs if medical schools have specific rules around it. The whole point is for medical schools is to show specific competencies around organic chemistry for some dumb reason. I don't know. But the medical schools will have rules on what they want. So you just have to reach out to the schools and ask about what they think. Amy asks, stuck on how to answer this secondary question. Discuss the role diversity played in your decision to become a DO. Do I talk about diversity and then why DO and try to tie it together? Rachel, how do you read that?
Discuss the role diversity played in your decision to become a DO. That's really interesting because the way I read it is they're assuming diversity played a role in your decision to be a DO, which I don't think it necessarily did. Unless, again, diversity doesn't always mean self-identification questions that are boxes we check on forms, right? It could be, I think the country needs more osteopathic physicians and I want to be one of them. Yeah. But I can't answer for you the question, of course, because I don't know what your why medicine is. But I would say here, don't be limited in your definition of diversity, right? A lot of secondaries ask about diversity, and we've seen successful diversity essays or secondaries in particular that talk about your school has no greenery, and I want to bring some gardening to it, or here's a thing that happened to me that I'm excited to share with the team, with my classmates. But that's an interesting one.
So to her question, right? Do I talk about diversity and then why DO? I don't think that's what the question is asking. If that's literally the question there about discuss the role diversity played in your decision to become a DO. Yeah. That's it. I don't know if I've seen that question before, so I'm interested to know what school that is.
Yeah.
And if that's the literal prompt.
Yeah. Yeah, be interested to see the word for word prompt.
Yeah. Do DO programs yield protect, or is this concept a myth? I have a 3.99 science GPA and a 5.14 MCAT. Will this keep me out of some programs? Haha. So this came up, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. Yield protection is a thing at all schools everywhere. And so, it could be an issue. And if you think it may be an issue, reach out to the school. Write really good secondaries about why you want to go there, and potentially reach out to the school and say, hey, I want to go here. So for someone who doesn't understand yield protection, basically the whole process of applying to medical school from an admissions committee standpoint is we have 10,000 verified applications that come into our school. We have 200 seats. We need to whittle down to 600 interviews for those 200 seats. We need to accept from those 600 interviews, we need to accept 300 people or whatever that number is. Each school kind of knows their data, hopefully, so that they know we accept this many people every year. We know that some percentage of those people that we accept are not going to come here because they're going to go to other schools. They are trying to figure out who are the best people, not only for their class, but also who are going to come. And that is the game that admissions committees play year in and year out. And it's stressful for them because they don't want to undersubscribe a class because then they're not getting full tuition. They're not staffing up for clinical rotations and all that stuff. They don't want to oversubscribe because they don't have enough butts in seats for all the butts in lecture halls and stuff. And so you'll see every once in a while on Reddit and Student Doctor Network, hey, school so-and-so has asked me to defer a year and they'll give me $20,000 in tuition, like financial aid. If it's basically the same thing when you go to the airport and Southwest is like, hey, we have too many passengers. Will anyone take a voucher to fly at a later time? It's the same exact thing. Airlines oversell tickets because they know people won't show up. It's the same exact thing. And I don't know why I've never thought about that until just now. So anyway, so yeah, yield protection is a thing. So a DO school or very likely, I talk about this a lot for Texas schools. If you're a Texas resident, you have a really strong application and you apply to an Oklahoma school or a Louisiana school or a whatever school that borders Texas, that school may go, wow, you're a really great student, but you're a Texas resident. You're going to want to stay in Texas because everyone wants to stay in Texas when you're from there. So that happens to Texas residents. That happens to really high stat people applying to DO schools. Potentially, it happens to really high stat people applying to what they consider safety schools because they go onto this stupid MSAR and they go, oh, here are my stats. Oh, look, UC Riverside has a median MCAT of 509 or whatever it is, and I have a 520. They'll definitely want me. And you're from New York City and stayed on the East Coast for your education, and you've never stepped foot in California. They're not going to take you because they know you're not going to go there and you don't fit their mission. So,
yeah.
Yeah, long rant. McKenna, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you touched on the safety school thing because that for me has been a concern that I've seen people think they were getting yield protected out, but they talk about DOs like safety schools. I think their essays aren't compelling. And I've definitely seen people get rejected from DO long before they hear about MDs. And I think, yeah, it could be yield protector. It could be, they could tell you weren't into it. Yeah. Right? People are not excited to be backups, right? They don't want to have a class of future physicians who are all there begrudgingly.
Yeah. I want to come to your school because my stats are good enough and you'll be my worst case scenario. Homie, don't play that. I missed that skit. Anyway, McKenna asks, how do we tackle why this school for a brand new school? I discussed the opportunities to build student culture and their mission. What else? Verinia? New schools popping up left and right. Nashville's getting a new medical school soon. I just learned about that from Belmont University. When you can't really draw upon what has been done, how do you answer this question?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely approaching it from the opportunities to build on what they're trying to accomplish there through student culture, through their mission, opportunities to help the school itself grow and recognition, I guess. I don't know if maybe not recognition, but at least definitely talking about helping the school itself grow and being kind of proud of being in the position to be that first class. To be able to do that, I think is really exciting too. So
Loud and proud.
yeah.
Yes. Olivia, what are your recommendations on staying positive and persevering while waiting on results from a third MCAT attempt and second application cycle? So my biggest concern, let me just talk about a concern real quick, and then we'll talk about some motivation. If it's end of July as we're recording this, you're still waiting on an MCAT attempt, and hopefully you've submitted an application now. Waiting on that MCAT, like, it's getting late. Why did you take that MCAT so late? Now, maybe you took it in March or April and you got your score back and you're like, oh no, I need to take it again, and you wanted to submit or whatever. So maybe that's the thing. But you have to make sure you're setting yourself up for success when you apply to medical school. And taking the MCAT late and having a late application that's finalized is just shooting yourself in the foot. So outside of that, Rachel, what kind of yoga mindset can we bring into some peace and comfort here?
Yeah. So I did a session called Yoga for Premeds a few weeks ago that was sort of specifically aimed at people taking the MCAT this summer. So Olivia, you may want to check that out. Right now, there's not a lot of yoga for premeds on YouTube. So I think if you search that phrase, you'll find that video in the top couple hits. It's on my yoga channel, not on Mappd, although we could put it on Mappd. But it's about being now, and it's about the ethos that Ryan and I talk a lot about here in Mappd, which is collaboration, not competition. Ryan already said the challenge of applying late is you are putting yourself a little bit behind the competition because some of them are getting interviews soon, but that's done. That's already happened, right? So now you're in the situation you're in. You still have a chance, because the only way you have no chance is if you don't apply. So I think you have to do a little positive self-talk where you're just going, I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. And then also giving your brain a break. And some of us are good at just going, okay, brain, that's enough fretting. I'm moving on. Some of us need some help redirecting. Part of that Yoga for Premeds video literally talks about how to do some of that redirecting, so you can check that out. But if you are waiting on the results for the application for the MCAT and you've already completed all your secondaries, then I think the other thing you can do is take action with whatever's next in the process, right? So ideally, interviews are coming. Don't be behind the game on those. Sometimes with hybrid interviews, you only get a couple days notice. Do that prep as soon as you have all your secondaries in, so that you kind of think, okay, maybe I didn't start as far out in front of the timeline as I wanted, but when interviews come, I'm going to be able to take the first time slot I'm offered, and I'm going to be totally prepared. So some of it is distracting yourself, and some of it is going, where can I get ahead now? And I'm going to do it. And good luck.
Godspeed. Started watching season 3 of For All Mankind. Oh, such a good show. Such an amazing show. Bakery asks, I am an incoming freshman. What can I do now that would make an impact? Open up a Mappd app account. Make sure that you're tracking all of your activities, your GPAs, writing reflections, tracking all of that stuff, getting that timeline roadmap based on when you are planning on starting medical school. Potentially look at signing up for Mappd App Pro to chat with one of our amazing advisors as you need. But the goal is to learn how to be a student first and foremost as you're launching your college career. Don't worry about all of the other things that you're seeing people do. I don't know why my phone is ringing. I have do not disturb on. Don't worry about what other people are doing, getting activities, joining clubs, all that stuff. Be a good student first and foremost, and then figure out how to add on after that.
And enjoy it.
Enjoy. Yes.
I love first years. They're a blank slate. There's so much potential there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't forget to sleep. Don't forget to eat decently sometimes.
Make good choices.
Don't forget to have fun. Yeah. Make good choices and have fun. There's a nexus there.
Yeah, there.
Make good choices. Yes. Don't get arrested. No institutional actions.
Yeah, make calculated choices when
There
you're
you
having fun. But yeah, be a pre-med, but also be a person.
One more here. AJ, is it a red flag if all my clinical experience hours are spent scribing and assisting an ophthalmologist? Nope. Okay, one more. David asks, what are your thoughts on cold contacting physicians about shadowing? As in reaching out to doctors' offices you don't know to see if they'll let you shadow for a day. I think that is a wonderful idea. And probably a necessity to get shadowing. It's something that students, they'll be like, I couldn't get any shadowing. I'm like, how did you try to look for shadowing? I just Googled and I didn't see anything. Like you gotta go out and face rejection in the face. Be like, hey, I don't know if you allow this. I'm a pre-med student. I would love to shadow Dr. Smith because I read online, blah, 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 right? Be as specific as possible, be as complimenting as possible, do your research. Don't just blind call 100 different offices and go, can I shadow? Can I shadow? Can I shadow? Can I shadow? Right? Tell them a little bit about who you are. Go to HIPAAtraining.com and say, hey, I'm a HIPAA certified pre-med student, vaccinated HIPAA certified pre-med student. So yeah, I think it's wonderful. Start with your own doctors. That's a good place to start. Friends and families, doctors, and those personal connections go a long way. All right. Well, I'm sorry that we couldn't have our new advisor, Courtney, here. She had some tech issues that caused her to not be able to join us, but she will be with us forevermore until the end of days, because once you start working for Mappd, there's no escape, right, Verinia?
Absolutely. There's no going back.
There's no going back. We appreciate all of you coming and hanging out with us to answer questions here at Ask Mappd. No longer Ask the Dean. We are now Ask Mappd, and you can ask Mappd lots of questions at Mappd App Pro by signing up for a free account as a trial with that 30 days free. Go check it out. We have some fun, interesting, and amazing features coming to Mappd App, both on a pro level and a free level, including we're going to enter all of your grades for you because a lot of you are scared of doing that. So that's coming soon. Stay tuned for that. We will see you next week here at Ask Mappd. Vernia, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me or joining all of us. Whatever. Goodbye, everyone.
See you next week.
Bye.